In this unit, you studied defining and non-defining relative clauses. Let's have another look at this language. Jean tells Samuel about recent crimes in her neighbourhood. Listen to the first part of their conversation.
I'm getting really worried about the break-ins that have been happening in this area. The last one was at Mr. Costa's house, which is only 2 streets away.
Really? I'm sorry to hear that. I remember the time when my flat was burgled. I wouldn't wish that on anyone.
I know. Anyway, we've set up a neighbourhood watch scheme, which should help.
Jean says, I'm getting really worried about the break-ins that have been happening in this area. She uses a defining relative clause, that have been happening in this area, to identify which break-ins she's talking about. It's essential to the meaning of the sentence. Jean adds, the last one was at Mr. Costa's house, which is only 2 streets away. She uses a non-defining relative clause, which is only 2 streets away, to add extra information about the location of the house. Samuel says, I remember the time when my flat was burgled. He uses a defining relative clause, when my flat was burgled, to specify the time he's talking about. We can use when after time words, such as time, year, and day. Jean says, we've set up a neighbourhood watch scheme, which should help. She uses a non-defining relative clause, which should help, to refer to the whole clause that precedes it. It's her comment on setting up the neighbourhood watch scheme. Look at a table with different kinds of relative clause. After nouns like time, day, and year, we can use a clause with when or that, or even omit these pronouns in informal language. After the reason, we can use why or that, or omit the pronoun. After words like place or somewhere, we can use a clause with where or that. We can omit the pronoun in informal language. We can use which after prepositions or before nouns to form certain fixed expressions like in which case or the result of which. These expressions tend to be formal. When you are ready, go to the activity. Is the grammar correct? Choose yes or no. That's correct. We say, do you own the car that is parked over there? Or, do you own the car which is parked over there? And, Graham's late, which is typical of him. Jean and Samuel continue discussing the break-ins taking place in Jean's neighbourhood. Listen to more of their conversation.
This isn't the type of place that burglaries normally happen in. That's why it's been so upsetting for my neighbours, who are mostly young families.
Yeah, they must be very shaken up. Well, I hope the police catch whoever's responsible.
Me too. And I really hope the people whose homes were burgled have good insurance.
Don't worry, I'm sure they'll all be covered against theft.
Jean says, this isn't the type of place that burglaries normally happen in. She uses a defining relative clause, that burglaries normally happen in. Prepositions usually go at the end of relative clauses in informal speech. Jean adds, that's why it's been so upsetting for my neighbours, who are mostly young families. She uses a non-defining relative clause, who are mostly young families, to add extra information about her neighbours. Samuel says, well, I hope the police catch whoever's responsible. He uses a defining relative clause, whoever's responsible. The indefinite pronoun whoever means the person who. Jean says, I really hope the people whose homes were burgled have good insurance. She uses a defining relative clause, whose homes were burgled. The relative pronoun whose indicates possession. Look at a table with more kinds of relative clause. Who can be a subject or an object pronoun in a relative clause. In formal language, we can use whom as an object pronoun. Whom is also used after prepositions. In non-defining relative clauses, we can use quantifiers like none, some, few, and all, followed by of whom, of which, or of whose. Prepositions usually go at the end of a relative clause. But in formal language, they can go before the relative pronoun. For multi-word verbs, however, the particle stays with the verb. When you are ready, go to the activity. Is the grammar correct? Choose yes or no. Look at the sentences again. We say, they asked many questions to which he had no answer, and these forms are for the students, all of whom need a copy. Good work. You've reached the end of the language check. Feel free to use it any time that you want to revise relative clauses.